And this, what's that?
I can put a timer on to be fair.
All right, go for it, Armina. This is from, don't start yet until I start reading. This is from Greg's son, and I know that Greg is an architect who's worked on community college projects, including at PCC, and he's also a member of the PCC Foundation. And he happens to be the gentleman that gave us some good design input on the mirror pools and other subjects. So here we go. Now we'll go on the clock. Dear committee members, in reviewing the Facilities Committee minutes of March 7th, 2023, and the summary of the presentation on the 3 construction delivery methods, build, design, bid, build, DBB, lease, leaseback, LLB, and design, build, DB, I thought I would share some of my observations collected during my 40-plus years in architectural practice with all 3 methods, including crafting design build criteria documents for the owner. For what it's worth, remembering that I'm not an attorney and I'm not dispensing legal advice. Generally, in the realm of public works construction, any of the above methods of procuring construction can result in a successful project, given realistic expectations and intelligent implementation. Each has its pros and cons, as pointed out in the presentation. Determining the appropriate method or method suitable for each owner is largely dependent on the unique goals and mindset of each owner when weighing pros and cons. The analogy of a 3-legged stool is useful to keep in mind. The 3 legs of construction are budget, schedule, and quality. With any construction delivery method, a public entity owner can at best expect 2 of the 3 legs to be optimized, with the 3rd leg given lesser priority. I've observed at least one public entity owner trying to micromanage the construction to optimize all 3 legs, but falling quite short and even creating unintended negative consequences down the line because of their actions and decisions. Also true is that none of the delivery methods eliminates risk to the owner. The risk is merely shifted around. The owner should carefully consider where the risk is most tolerable and manageable. My comments on the presentation are: design, bid, build, DBB. Architect typically maintains limited oversight of the work and responds to questions about the design on behalf of the district. This is an oversimplification and implies that the district is at a disadvantage regarding faithful execution of the design during construction. Compared with alternate construction delivery methods, I would recommend the committee members asked to review the district standard architect agreement language to be fully aware of the architect's responsibilities during construction. Contractors take advantage of competitive process. Yes, some contractors are tempted to take advantage, but this can be mitigated by a tight set of contract documents, drawing and specs. Although there is no such thing as a perfect set of drawings and specs, a sharp contractor can tell when a set is too loose and can strategize a way to work that to his or her advantage, not just at bidding, but throughout the construction. This aspect of the presentation should not be considered a one-size-fits-all rule. The matter of how to prepare a tight set of drawings and specs is a totally different discussion. Design suffers from a lack of input from contractors and subcontractors, not really if the AE team does its job properly. There can be an advantage to have. If the committee would like, we can keep going, or we can stop at 3 minutes. That's up to the rest of the committee.
Can you make a photocopy of that email?
Yep, I can. What I can do is just forward.
Yeah.
Or give it, can you
Give it to me and then I'll forward it.
Here, I've got a hard copy. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. I wanted to read that into the public record, but we can just give you the hard copy. Thank you, Alina. Okay. Next item is, let's see. Oh, we're on B1, the resolution to approve. Do we have a further presentation from staff on this?
We do.
Okay. Take it away, please.
All right, so this is just, so I thought what would be beneficial, because it's not, I think taking this contextually outside of like the process when it comes to the board is difficult to sort of manage, right? None of these resolutions, when they're approved, no construction project can be bid without board approval. Signed. That's the first step. So I thought what would be beneficial, rather than getting into the nuts and bolts of those pieces, we'll go there. But the general theme is the district, like many other districts we'll talk about, all of the districts who have this as a part of their process, have sort of see it as a tool belt. There are multiple ways to deliver construction projects. And this is just our ability to allow the district staff to consider all the varying methods, do the analysis, present that analysis to the board, and then walk through that. So let's walk through the authorization to bid process first, and then we'll jump into the actual resolutions themselves, which are pretty, they're generic in nature and intended to be so. So hold on one second. Glasses. I don't know, that's for the.
I would love it if it's
Yeah,
just to be more
is that
together.
better? Okay. Hold on, let me make sure Sam can see this as well. Share screen.
Thank you.
You did the previews first, and then all of a sudden, then it gets dark. Absolutely.
15 minutes of previews.
Which one is it? All right, team, let's do this. All right, so let's walk through the process. So the first sort of question becomes, how does something get considered, for this sort of path? So we have the ability, the district has multiple ways that it builds a project list. So construction projects are considered when vetted through like a host of college processes. So there's a deferred scheduled maintenance plans that are submitted to the chancellor's office. So we put those up there. So sometimes we might ask for funding for those pieces. Sometimes we put them on our plan so they understand when scheduled maintenance dollars may be used for those things. We have the district's annual planning process. So we're actually in it right now. So a host of faculty, staff across the district have put in their annual plans. They ask for certain things. Some of those things may be facilities related. So that's a way to build the project list. The facilities standing committee, the college standing committee, so there's actual a subcommittee of college council that reviews all facilities related work. It's manned or staffed by faculty. It's a shared governance group, so there's faculty, student, and staff representation as well as district staff who are responsible for those areas. There will be the new Measure PCC bond work group, and also special projects can sort of land on this list. So there's a variety of ways in which construction process can be considered by the college, and these are those ways. So then this is just the public contract code about how you bid those things. So public contract code, so 22032 just talks about the different amounts, right? $200,000. It's basically most projects go through a bidding process, which is what we want. And then sort of the way that the project list works at the district level is projects are submitted and they're reviewed, and there's lots of discussions around things. So great examples that you'll see that'll come like on the board agendas in either past months or current months would be like the foster youth area, or the family resource center, or classroom updates like our, what is it, 520?
525,
Right, so you'll see those like consistently sort of bid out projects, because again, those came through either deferred maintenance or facilities committee projects or bond projects, a host of different ways. And so you'll see them in a variety of ways, whether we're asking you all to authorize us to bid those projects, or whether we're closing out a project, like we're saying this project is formally done, or whether we're awarding the project, right? So you'll see it in three ways. So projects get submitted, they get reviewed, discussed in great detail. Then the analysis gets performed, which may include architectural rendering, structural analysis. So people can say, a faculty member can come and say, hey, I would love to have 15 new elliptical, runners in the W building. for this class. And we're like, great, let's put that on the project list. Well, we have to understand like what the electrical requirements of the building need. And so there's a lot of robust conversation that goes on between Richard's area and the dean and the faculty in that area. We decide whether we need to go to DSA for approval. All of this stuff is happening at the local level before we get to submit to authorize that for bidding out a project. So then, as you think about then the project delivery methods, when you get an ATB, which here's an example of an authorization to bid, which we made some adjustments based on your all's recommendation. There's 3 that way.
Are these the agendas?
No, this is examples of the bid packets that you'll receive. 2, and then 2 down there. All right, so the district staff, as they're building the ATV process, so this should look familiar to you. Nothing, no construction project can be moved forward without first an authorization to bid. So this first sort of consent item will contain an actual sort of overview of the project and which delivery method is being recommended. You will then have a formal ATB document that sort of gives some outlines to it, with again a recommendation of one of the 3, design, bid, build, or lease back. Then this was the suggestion that we received last time from y'all in terms of an analysis document. And so each of the methods that you will expect to receive in an ATB packet will have the design, bid, build, sort of traditional. So if we're comparing, let's say the district wants to move forward with the lease back, you'll always receive analysis on both the traditional design, bid, build in comparison with one of the other 2 methods, right? So you say, okay, well, we're gonna give you the traditional sort of overview about how much the project costs. Will it meet the does it meet the lowest responsive bidder project goals? Yes or no? What's the estimated project cost, estimated change orders, and all of the documents that provide the evidence for meeting that particular standard. If we just decide to go either lease back or design build, in addition to the design bid build analysis, you'll receive one of the other 2. So that there's a comparison so you understand this is the reason why this method is being selected. And then the last page is what the district staff's recommendation is actually going to be related to that particular item. And this one page, so is that this one goes to? Oh, district staff recommendation. Where's that?
Oh, it's a double-sided.
Oh, these ones are, so it's just on page.
Oh, it's right.
So then you'll have the analysis, you'll have the consent item, the ATB, the analysis document that gives a comparison of a minimum of 2, the district staff's recommendation, and if it's a design build project, you'll actually have the last page, which is a project-based resolution for that item, because that's the only one that legally requires an additional resolution for. So this will be the packet, right? Each of these will contain that. We would use the normal process as these are attached to the board agenda. Questions can be asked in advance. We can also pull an item in a board meeting and ask for additional clarification on any of the 2 recommendations. So this is the normal process. Normal process with the suggested addition of the rubric that has for this piece. Now, in thinking about the generic resolutions that you have before you, so we included a couple of things. The Division of State Architects, these are 3 valid methods that are given by DSA, so I included that documentation. Yes, sir?
Let me interrupt you. I'm looking at the May 7 consent calendar item H1. And I think we said there was something on page 4, I believe.
On the back sides to how they printed
Yeah, I don't
this.
have any backsides printed on one.
She does. She's referring
Yeah,
to
there you
this.
go.
Ours is
Yeah.
I don't have.
No,
Makes
you
it-
didn't want you to put
I
it
don't know why it didn't print, but
It's supposed to be the backside of that one.
Yeah,
Thank you.
but I'll reprint it before you head
All
out.
right, thanks.
So then, so this packet comes to you all, right, with the rubric, the understanding analysis piece, and then the generic resolutions that you have in front of you today, the adjustments that are made, are intended so that the district can consider these two in addition to design bid build. That's what those pieces authorize. And the authorization to bid a project actually gives the district the authority to bid it after you all approve that that's the selected method to go for.
Question.
Mhm.
So once this is authorized, the ATB is approved by the
Mhm.
board, is it at that point you start issuing out the RFPs?
Correct. So then an RFP will go out and bidders will bid on that.
How about attaching the RFP to the ATB, so we approve the RFP along with the ATB?
So the RFP never gets attached to, I mean, it's like a 500-page document. It's huge, so it has all of the specification, it gets uploaded to what's called Planet Bids, that's where the contractors go to pull the bid documents and they submit.
How about a summary then?
A summary of the,
RFP, the basic requirement. You don't summarize 500 pages.
Sure.
Just the key points that you think that's gonna.
should know.
Right
What would,
to know.
That's usually on the consent item, and it's also referenced in the
yeah, it usually is, so this is just an example of something we've done in the past, but it'll include on the consent item a general understanding of what we're bidding out.
That's a little too short.
Okay.
But
What would you
one page.
suggest, like what additional, like, I don't want to guess about what you think you want.
Right.
What would you want to include? What would include it?
We don't have to decide that now, but once maybe if I see an RFP and say, oh, the key highlights, the price, what, is there a DEI statement? Do the contractors have a affirmative action policy? What are their efforts on increasing diversity in their management? Like, do they recruit women in construction?
So we normally have
Things
normal
like
bid
that.
documents. We can show you those. How about we send those over?
Oh, you
We
include all
have-
of those.
Normal bid.
I mean, I'm
pieces
open
of bid
to
documents.
what other people feel about that, but since we have certain.
There's a template that we
values
use.
that we have.
Sure.
We want to make sure that those values are communicated to
Okay.
people that are submitting proposals.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
Like also geographic area, like having the vendors within our area, so they're hiring locally.
Mm-hmm.
Or if they can't hire locally, why don't they hire them locally? That kind of stuff.
Okay.
But I assume you have all of that in your.
In our bid documents. Mhm.
Maybe that can be summarized somewhere.
The bid documents themselves. I mean, we can give you a copy of our templates of our bid documents. And so it wouldn't necessarily include like the specifications for the electrical,
No,
this
not
thing,
that,
or,
but
right.
things that you think are values, make sure our values are communicated to the vendor so that when we select the vendor, it's consistent with what we believe.
Sure.
Consistent with our mission,
Mhm.
something like that. I'm open to discussion on this.
I mean, it sounds like it's not that we're not doing those things. It's just we want to make sure when we put it on our calendar, the consent calendar, that it's people, they look at it, they know that that's what we're looking for from the public perspective.
Yes,
Is that
yes,
okay?
that these issues are important to us, so when people are bidding out, they know that these are the issues that are important to us.
Mhm.
I'm assuming that everybody is generally qualified and competent and they have the license to do what they do. But then there are specific issues that are unique to PCC that we care about that vendors should have.
Mhm.
And that we would take into consideration when you're selecting the contractor.
Sure, so there are a couple of things that happen in that process. So the way in which, so it depends on, again, it actually depends on the delivery method.
Right.
So if you select the traditional one, all that goes out the door. It's the lowest responsive bidder. That's who wins the package. So if our values and those things that we would want them expressed, then we'd actually probably be leaning towards either a lease back or a design build
Right.
methodology, because those pieces allow greater flexibility for us to assert
Right.
those pieces.
Right.
We can't assert those in the traditional model.
That's correct.
But I do think that there is an existing expression of like, here's our mission, our values, pieces.
Right.
And what's difficult in the current model or the traditional, let me say, the traditional model is those pieces can't be evaluated. It's just the lowest responsibility. So, but we can share out the current, like the statements that get said, but we have no ability to evaluate that in all three methods, only in certain methods.
That makes sense.
I mean, I'm assuming that when we have the rubric and stuff, that will also have a lot of detail, enough detail for us to look at. Because it's going to accompany, like this item will be accompanied with all these items, right? And so I think that
Right.
will already have a lot of that we were just talking about already built into what was proposed here with this rubric. So.
Or maybe, when we're looking at the construction delivery methods, like you said, the traditional method lacks flexibility, but these other methods, we can have a rubric, like a checkoff, that says, here are the things that are the qualifications or factors that we're going to look into. Do they have a diversity statement? Do they have an EEOC plan? Do they have an affirmative action statement? What are they doing to actively recruit diverse architects, contractors, women, disadvantaged, handicapped people, etc.? Where they're working, where their employees coming from? Are they local within the PCC district? If they're not, why are you bringing in people that are not local? And I'm not saying it's a litmus test, but those are very heavily weighted factors in making a decision, with the ultimate decision being, holistic, but heavily weighted.
I think those things make sense with lease-back or design build.
Right.
I think we can absolutely, particularly with, if you look at the rubric, and Sam, please jump in if you'd like, he's on the phone too, but the lease-back gives us a lot of flexibility in terms of asserting and how we will evaluate contractors as they come in. We just lose that with design bid build.
And do you have a committee that looks at all of the proposals?
We have district staff and facilities that do. Most folks don't have this skill set to
Right.
evaluate.
Well, I know you do.
Functional pieces. So yes, there's a
SME.
Yeah,
correct.
Right.
generally we do have a committee when we evaluate the projects that come in on RFQs. Like we said, on design build, it's straight to lowest bidder, so there's no evaluation other than price.
Right.
And we would run this, so like what we're doing for services right now for architect, we will have a rating criteria against the RFQ, RFP,
Right.
and we will have a committee that will rate all the architects that submit,
Right.
and then we'll shortlist.
Right. I think that's something maybe we can bring to the board, that in the committee, that it is our desire that with the values of PCC be
Sure.
maintained in the selection process and ultimately.
Sure. I think that would be a part of the
Absolutely.
district staff's recommendation. I mean, the
Right.
goal so there's a lot of legwork that happens prior to it coming to the board, like a lot of
I
legwork.
know,
And
yes.
so I think the district staff making a formal recommendation based on some of those pieces makes a lot of sense. But they're to the public comment that way, there's always like these three: time, quality,
Sure.
and cost that we're always factoring in, and then we're going to be evaluating that on a case-by-case basis. There are some projects that may be applicable for design bid build. I mean, the Serafian project is currently using that piece, and
If it's state funded,
If it's-
we're going to be going design
good
bid.
build. But there may be flexibility as we get into other types of projects, specialized projects, when you're thinking about, let's say we were building a lab facility, maybe we really want someone with real experience building sort of like, or a culinary program in a commercial sort of, kitchen kind of scenario. We might want someone who really has that specialized experience doing that work, that they can demonstrate that, not just any contractor who has license to do it, but that demonstrated work in that particular field. So it does give us, these methods just give us flexibility to make decisions based on what projects are put on the plate, and then what analysis is performed, and then a recommendation comes to you all with those pieces.
The committee, is it the one that makes the recommendation on which construction to live in?
Yes, well, it sort of comes through the construction facilities area. They're the most,
You're the SMEs.
Yes,
You know
they're-
what works
they're-
best.
I'm gonna make a recommendation. So I'm gonna look at the parameters.
Right.
I'll just use a gross example, because I'm just gonna throw it out there. We have a 100-year celebration. I'd like to deliver a project for that 100-year celebration. I have a certain amount of time to design, and if I took it to standard method, you're talking about a year of design, possibly a year in DSA, then we have to bid it, and then we have to build it. 3 years from now, guess what? I missed our 100-year celebration.
130 year.
Yes.
Okay.
So what I'm gonna look at is, I
Let's
have,
just wait till 200.
yeah, I need to take a look at what the needs of the college are, and then with, based on my best estimate of what the delivery method or what will serve the college the best, I will make a recommendation. And in some cases, it may be, as I've told my boss a bunch of times, I'm a carpenter, so I'm used to a lot of different tools in my tool belt. Not every one of these methods is right for every project, but it may be right to do a design build in order to accelerate the project. I'm going through a collaborative process with the architect and the builder, which we're getting them involved a lot sooner, and then I won't be going through the bidding process on the back end. I've already bid it on the front end with the design build. Same thing with lease back. It may behoove us, if I have a project nested on top of another project, it may be based on I've already qualified a contractor, they're already performing, they're within a certain skill set. It may behoove us to do a lease back on another project that's interlaced in there instead of putting another contractor on top of that. So it's going to depend on what the college needs. I'll take a look at it. I'll take a look at the holistic, the facilities master plan, and look at deliveries, and then I'll make a recommendation.
And you were just saying this makes a lot of sense. And I'm assuming that's what this is going to be in this kind of
Yes.
rubric part of the document.
That's my homework assignment from my boss. That I'll go through that and make sure I check it and then provide you with the information that says that I just didn't wake up today and decide we're going to do a design build. Yeah, we're going to do a design build today.
That makes sense.
It would be logical and
It's not a
thoughtful.
dartboard, you mean?
No, it's not.
Energy board?
Although I do have one of those executive decision makers in my office. Yes.
Thank you.
I see, okay, that was very helpful.
And then I just wanted, so because these methods were introduced, there's a ton of districts who are, it's really heavily utilized in K-12, but our community college colleagues are also really, so LACCD has strong design build programs. Mount SAC is considering a lease back. San Mateo, I think, is also design build. South Orange County is lease back. San Diego, that thing is in it. That's San Diego School District. So just it's behind the whole
I
picture.
see it.
So. And this is just a handful, but I think Kern Community College District is also exploring. It gives us flexibility to do the things that you just mentioned about really prioritizing the district's mission and values and aligning that with, what makes sense based on a particular project. So that's these generic resolutions that are before you today. The hope and goal would be for us to make a recommendation for these resolutions to be approved, with the understanding that you now see the ATB process and we've added the rubric piece to that, that this would be how construction projects come to you in the future.
What's the difference between?
One's a clean copy and one's just shows you the track change version.
Oh, from the last time.
Mhm.
Oh, I see.
And just some cleanup of content.
So Candace, the idea is that we would have the board pass these two authorizations on a blanket basis, and then one of these two methods or the other would be deployed project by project.
Correct, during the ATV process. That is correct.
I appreciate the additions from our last meeting. I think it makes a lot of sense, both the kind of factors that we were talking about that I see reflected in the rubric, and also the specificity in section 2 of both of the amendments that may call out the authorization to bid that has to be approved by the board. So I think those changes make a lot of sense.
One change I would make is I would put in there approval and authorization, so that ultimately the board is approving it and it is authorizing you to move forward in the bid.
Sure.
But I would also like to look at the bid as well to make sure that our values are stated in there so that the people that are submitting proposals know what we are looking for, in addition to basic competency. Sure. There's these subjective qualities. Sure.
Outside of that change, is there any other questions or?
Then here,
So what we would do then, if you all agree and make a motion, I'm hopeful, to approve on our April board meeting, we would attach to the agenda item the 2 clean resolutions that with the adjustment of approval and authorization for the generic for lease back and design build. We'd also attach the, just so that there's context in terms of the delivery methods. We'd be happy to walk through those again. It's a joint meeting with our students, so I just want to be cognizant in terms of time, but we're happy to do that. Or we can add this document to the consent item, so that if there are questions, then we can respond to those as well, rather than going through another 40-minute presentation, but we're happy to do that too.
Actually, okay, I understand.
You good?
I do.
we put this presentation off to April board meeting, right?
It is on the April 19th, yep.
So I think there should be a presentation and not just put this on the consent. Because only the,
It would be on the action item calendar.
Could we, I mean, if we have the full presentation, I just want to take away from our joint meeting. So if we had the presentation attached and there's specific questions from other colleagues, they can put them in. But then maybe VP Jones can just like do a really high level overview on that item about what these things are.
well, let me make another suggestion. How pressing is this to have this approved?
The considerations for, Richard would say, I wished it was on last month, but he's going to be generous and kind. So the pressing piece is the Galloway. We may want to utilize, based on some of those mission value pieces, for the Galloway Plaza for the 100-year celebration. So given that we made the recommendation not only for Mirror Pools a couple of months ago, I think in January direction, like these pieces tie to those 2 projects.
And what's your timeline for construction to completion for Galloway?
If this is on the agenda, I mean.
If this is on the agenda for April, I believe we can still make a spring of 25. And every time we count off a month, it just keeps pushing it another month back. That's where we're at. Luckily, Galloway is, it's a single story. It's a small footprint. It is specialized though. It's kitchen equipment. So there's the new green standards that we have to adhere to, and then all the food service part of it. So, that's just kind of another reason to kind of drive the designer and building team. I think it would be a great way, since we're anticipating over $2.5 million. I think it's a great way for us to get our feet wet, so to speak. We may try it and we may decide, you know what, this is not for us.
Correct.
As a college, and then we will just only do design.
Were you asking whether or not to have this as an informational item in open session?
What I was asking, well, let me say it this way. I don't like long board meetings. I'd rather get home sooner rather than later, but having said that, to me, this is not a consent calendar item. This is an item that
This would be an action item.
I understand, and the board should understand, this is important. This is, we're talking about alternative methods that we haven't done before as a board, or as a college, pardon me, that how we're going to spend $565 million. And it is not something that should be on the consent calendar. It shouldn't be on the action item without a presentation. We've had that presentation here, but.
We're happy to give the presentation if so.
And that's why I asked if we could put it off another month. I don't want to put it off, but I don't want to just have this be here it is. And it's not the same to give board members some paperwork and say, read this as opposed to giving a presentation.
I hear what you're saying, and I completely support that we should probably have a robust conversation. It is a big decision. If you, again, I don't know what the conflicts will be on the next board meeting. If we need to do a study session in May and approve it in May.
It would have to be, I wouldn't even characterize it as, it'd be an action item and we present to the action item.
Okay,
So
study
the board
session.
would- Yeah.
Yeah, I have no problem having it be an action item in April if that's important for your time. We don't want to slow you down. Alton, go ahead.
I mean, we already pushed off a month from last month, so
Yeah.
to me, I don't think I hear that we want to push up again. I would oppose that. So, I mean, I'm happy to spend, 20 minutes here in this presentation during the board meeting. The only reason why I was hesitant was just because I didn't want to take away from the time that we were spending with associated students. But if it's in addition and not taking away from any time, that's perfectly fine. And of course, we probably don't need to dive into it like the hour conversation we had last
It
time.
would be very succinct.
Yeah, and Erica, the way we do our joint meeting with associated students, we do that first, yes or no, and let them go, or do we make them suffer through all the rest of this stuff?
I think we've done it both ways, but we could have it like we set it up, and then you all could move it to the beginning, or we can just set up the agenda so it's at the beginning. Armina and I were just talking about the fact we're going to go back to the last couple of years and see exactly where we placed it on the agenda. My recollection is we did it earlier so that the students didn't have to sit through the whole meeting. But we can double check that.
Yeah, that's my recollection too, and I would recommend that we do that. And so it detracts less from the student meeting if we do that first, and then they can stay or not if they see fit, but we'll take care of that part of the meeting.
Okay.
But this is pretty important.
Yeah, I'm assuming too is if at the meeting when we present, if there are other board members that don't have a comfort level, then we can, I'm assuming they can motion to pushing it out and having more information on it. From my standpoint, as Candace has brought up, this is throughout the industry.
Yeah.
We did it at LAUSD in a $20 billion program, a bond program, built new schools with it, did modernizations with all forms, all three forms.
Yeah.
So for me, I have a comfort level. I understand that this is brand new to the board, and so we're here to help you to understand and get that comfort level, or maybe we don't get there, we don't have a comfort level, and we just go design, bid, build.
Yeah, Richard, my bet is that it'll pass and maybe unanimously, and there probably won't be that many questions, but I think it's so important that we shouldn't just say consent calendar, and we shouldn't just say put it on the action item without a presentation.
We're happy to present to it. It's not a problem.
Yeah.
Motion to place this on the agenda for next meeting?
We would, well, let's go beyond that, or we'll make a motion to put this on the agenda, but we would also have a motion where we would vote to recommend the approval of these as well.
I
And we can do it,
revision.
we can do it as
Yeah.
revised.
Yeah.
We can do two motions. First, we can just say a motion for the calendar this in the April meeting. Anyone want to make that
How,
motion?
can I just make
Do we
a
need to
combined
do
motion?
You can make a combined motion.
I'll just make, I think the recommendation is all we needed, but I'll just make both. I'll just say a motion to place both of these resolutions on the next board meeting with our committee's recommendation with the slight amendment that trustee Kwong mentioned earlier.
Okay, as revised.
As revised, thank you.
Do we have a second?
I'll say.
Okay, and then remember, as we vote, this is just a recommendation. You can vote for this, you can vote against it, and we'll report what the vote of the committee was. We'll start out with our student trustee. Okay, and all of the rest of the trustees.
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
Thank you.
very good. You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam.
Yeah.
We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have completed item B1, and we are going to move on to information items. So C1 is Seraphian project update. Richard Candace, take it away.
Go ahead, sir.
Picture's worth 1,000 words.
Yeah.
So we have a little fun video. For those of you that don't know what our lovely 1970 Seraphian building looked like, there it is as it's being taken down.
It's hard to remember that
Yeah.
it's there.
Yes.
It's a live stream, right?
Yes.
Yes,
I didn't really think about it.
the foundation paid for it.
Little ants. I've seen it.
It's pretty amazing.
All of that in 1 minute and 15 seconds.
That was your year in a minute and 15 seconds.
That's your update?
No. We just wanted to give you a perspective of where we were about a year ago when we brought the demolition contractor into where we are today in the process. Currently, everything is moving along. We did get our first delay claim. We're looking at about a 3-month slip on the HVAC. We're still waiting for electrical. They haven't committed on the electrical. So that really pushes us from an April of an April of 24 to a July of 24 delivery. Still, remember, we were anticipating as a spring of 25 as our first programming in the building. So we're still within the target range of being able to occupy the building, work everything out, and even maybe do some minor moves with faculty before we would actually open it for spring of 25.
So Richard, I remember hearing about the electrical switchgear delay. Is the HVAC delay a new delay?
No, I thought I'd reported out that was another
You may
potential, the mechanical equipment was something that we were looking at, having a problem. The supply chain is still not there. We're anticipating that the electrical would not be an additive delay, that it would be concurrent.
Yeah.
So we believe, we just haven't gotten a delivery date on the switchgear yet, but we believe that it's going to be a delay, but that it will be running concurrent. It wouldn't be another 3 months and now we'd be done in October. But we're moving forward with all our submittal process, hammering out the last little bits of the finishes and color schemes, and we're doing our electrical and utility rough outs on the 5 stories right now as we speak. So everything's, so far is going where we're going. Change orders, we're negotiating as we go along. We have not settled on a change order yet, but there's a number of them that are on the table. One of the most significant ones would be that we had some details on the exterior weatherproofing system that we had to go back to the manufacturer and work out, so that drove some different details. So there'll be some additive, and there'll also be some credit back on that change order because there were details that the contractor bid on that we won't be using, but there's some new details, so we're gonna have to hash all of that out with the PCL. So far, everything's, as Candace did. So far, everything is going the way projects normally go. We don't have any problems as far as a working relationship with the contractor, and we are not anticipating it.
That's great. Your steel moment frame went up faster than my Type 3A wood frame. Let's go a lot faster. We got our switch gear in though, but it was delayed just like yours.
Well, what you're not seeing is all the fabrication that was going on at the yard before that came out, and that's what allows us to put the building blocks together.
Yeah. So good. Okay. So that's it for Seraphian.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll move on to C2, which is mirror pool project update.
Yeah, so the mirror pools, we just finished up a couple weeks ago. We had Smith Emery come out and do what we call destructive testing on the pools. So we actually went out and cored the pools to see where we are with the concrete and where we are with the reinforcing steel in the shell. All of those results came back positive. So now we can move forward with a rehabilitation project and not a replacement project. We still will be doing some extensive work to those shells, and we're still waiting to see if a cost analysis. Our architect feels that time-wise and money-wise, I think we did present previously a replacement versus a repair scenario. So now that we have those in hand, here's the good part. All the concrete. So concrete runs at a curve. It starts out at maybe at 3,200 to 3,000 psi, and it develops a strength, and then eventually on the back end it starts going down. We are probably pretty close, and it usually has about a 100-year life before it starts degrading. We are still probably at the tops of our curves. There was some compressive strengths that was at 7,000 psi compressive strength, and all the way up to 9,000 psi. A normal house footing is usually poured. Our design mixes is at 3,500 psi, and that's the amount of force before the concrete fails. These are not structural. They're, well, they hold water, but they don't fall into the same parameters as a classroom building that I would have to build. So they look like they're in good shape. So what we did look and expose the rebar. The rebar is clean. It's not rusted. It looks like it's in pristine condition. It appears that some of the rusting and cracking that I was seeing is from the repairs the remediation they did in the 80s. So in the 80s, they redid the cap around the top, and they also put on lath and plastered the sides. So that has degraded and the water has gotten in, and that lathing is generally just not very robust in the galvanizing. And so that lathing is actually deteriorating, and that's what we're seeing as the rust that's coming through there. I thought it might be rebar, but that's why we did destructive testing. The last thing that we have this week, because we were losing significant amount of water, just to make sure, because even though the cores don't show any evidence of water leaching through them, we're going to go ahead and run a piping pressure testing. It's our suspicion that the piping has worn out since the 80s. The 80s there was some remedial work done, but we think that's where we were probably losing all of our water was in the piping, which will be redone in the new.
So somewhere between the pump and the pool, the pipe should be in the ground and you can't.
And I'm gonna,
protect it.
yeah, we're gonna evidence that shortly this week. We're gonna have one of our vendors come out, pressurize, and then run a pressure test to see what kind of drop we get on it.
So I can't remember, what was the difference in time and cost if it was repaired versus?
Oh, that's a great question, Jim. My brain is.
Yeah, you told us before, I just.
Yeah,
can't
I'll
remember
have to go back. I think it's within 10 to 15%, but don't hold me to that, we would come
How
back.
about
and-
time-wise?
I think we're at a toss-up. The architect feels, and again, this is where I have to kind of make sure the vision of the college and the college best interests is served by the designer. I think our designer is cautious because they're worried about giving us a design on something that's already been in play for a number of years, and they're worried about, well, if it fails tomorrow or fails in the next 20 years, that's a reflection on them. They would rather, the designer would rather just tear out the pools and start all over again. That's what they would rather do.
Well, my designer, my project would rather spend more of my money.
Yeah.
So that's a common feature. So if you would be taking off an old skin that was put on in the 80s and putting a new skin over the top, and that should save time and money versus tearing everything out and rebuilding.
Yeah, so the other thing that because you got to remember the mirror pools when we cored, the mirror pools were originally 3 inches standard concrete, 3.5 inches. Somewhere in the 80s, they put a waterproofing membrane and poured about another 6-8 inches. So they shallowed up the pools. I don't know why, but somebody poured a lot of concrete on top of those pools. They haven't settled because there is added weight. They're in good condition. We would end up taking off the cap again. We would clean up the outsides, bush it back. We would change the elevations to meet that new hardscape that we saw. And then we would put a waterproofing membrane. And I think what I'm going to recommend is that we go with a tile inside versus a plaster. The tile will give us some of the reflectability. It will keep a uniform color, and it should last longer than plaster. Plaster usually lasts anywhere from 6 to 8 years, and you start getting some degradation, and would be replastering after 10.
Is tile easier to clean too?
Depends on your water, how hard the water is. Because I mean, that is a possibility that if you have hard water that you're going to pick up on the grout lines and the water level. But they do make, just like a regular swimming pool, pumice stones where they can come in and clean the tile. So that's where I think we'll save the time, because then the problem is, well, how do we waterproof that shell? There's a lot of great products out there these days that are sprayed on or rolled on for waterproofing. Once I have proven that empirically that our leak is not the shell but the piping, then we can feel more comfortable about maintaining those shells. I'm still working out with the designer where we're going to put the mechanical room and where we're going to put the chemical. Right now, it does not have a chemical dispersion system. It's basically our grounds people walking around it with a gallon of chlorine and pouring chlorine in it. We're looking to modernize that so that it's automated. So what that does is almost like the aquatic center where we have chlorine and acid. We would have to have some chemical stations. Those will be probably on the outside of the building. We're looking at leveraging the space under our stairwell right here as possible in the mechanical area. And then that would take the vault in between the larger pool and the small pool. You'll see there's like 2 big steel grates. There's an actually lift up in the vault that you walk down into the pit, and that's where the equipment is today.
Great. So that'll be done by the 100th?
I'm trying to get that one through.
Yeah, okay. Very good. Any questions? All right, that takes care of C2. We're on to item D, meeting schedule. What we've said is we'll meet as frequently as you need us to meet, so we don't slow you down on these projects. Do you know when you need us to meet next?
Next month, but the month after. If we have something that comes up, before we get into May, we'll let you know, but I think June would be.
But otherwise, we'll plan on June.
Yes, unless the only way we would probably come back is if there's additional recommendations on the resolutions. Then we would come back to you all in May with those changes. But if there aren't, then I would say we would defer till June.
How about if we do it in June before our full board meeting?
Yep.
So if there's something that we need to review and recommend.
Okay.
And, let's see, working backwards, it needs to be the week before the board meeting week.
Can you just send out a doable,
Yeah,
like somewhere
yeah,
the
send
first
out
2
a-
weeks in June?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that will work because at that point I should be recommending PM, CM firms shortlist, and also the architectural services shortlist should be all coming through right about that same time.
Okay. And if something comes up and you need us to meet before the May meeting, we'll do that. Okay. Item E, proposed future agenda items. Any requests or proposals? Okay, very good. And adjournment,
Motion to adjourn.
second? All in
Aye.
favor? Great. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for the full report.
Thank you guys.
It was good, it was eating.
Thank you.